topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hello and welcome to It's Your Voice, the show that hosts enriching conversations in diversity. My name is Bahia Yaksan. I am a Correlament coach and a diversity educator. I coach individuals and organizations in looking at their patterns that they wish to change and turning them to start kind of training themselves to recognize when that pattern shows up and how to create new patterns that serve them better and others. If you want to check out some of the courses I offer, you can go to my website, which is knowwhatyouvantcoaching.wordpress.com. Today, I'm very excited to have an old friend come join me on the show, Kim Parrott. And Kim, thanks for being here. I wanted to mention.
It's my pleasure to be here, Bahia.
I was trying to figure out how to celebrate a 250th birthday of a country, such a momentous thing. This country impacts so much of the world in so many ways. And then I read an article that you wrote, and I thought, perfect. Let me invite Kim. And we titled this show based on your article, and we've turned it into Constitutional Amendments Charade. Happy 250th to America. And I wanted you to share the story about the tradition you grew up with. After I read your bio, may I read your bio first?
Please.
Okay. I also like to tell people how we met. I believe the first time we actually met was when we were swimming 2+ miles in the Atlantic Ocean with a group of women. Does that sound right?
Yes, I remember it well.
That was awesome. So on the professional front, Kim has over 20 years of experience in leadership development, executive and team coaching, strategic planning, and facilitation for a broad range of organizations, including multinational corporations, colleges, government agencies, and the nonprofit sector. Kim holds a BA in history from Yale, an MA in teaching from Brown, and is a ICF certified coach. On the personal front, Kim engages in community activism through facilitating common ground conversations, which is I'm also really excited to hear more about. And you sing in a country western band, which is sounds so fun. And you perform stand-up comedy, aka laughtivism. Oh my gosh. Just reading that sentence makes me happy.
Good. That's the point.
Wow. I wish we could just have you do a stand-up comedy on this show sometime. Let me know if that's what you want to do.
It can be a little irreverent, just saying.
Well, and I also read, I didn't realize you used to be a history teacher. Is that right?
Yes. So that actually is partly what inspired the article. It was called Primary Sources. I write twice a month for my local newspaper. And so prior to my career in leadership, coaching, and development, I was a history teacher in the public high school system in Baltimore County. And I taught U.S. history and civics, world history. And so, part of my background was, even though I have great trouble remembering dates, I'm interested in historical methodology, how history is written about people who didn't necessarily write their own history. How do we learn about groups of people now who didn't have a written history? So the writing of history, who the audience is, who the writer is, all of that was fascinating to me. And the importance of primary sources, going back to the original document or data. And so that's what the Declaration of Independence is. It's a primary source, as well as the Constitution and the amendments. And so I was speaking to going back to those sources and using the July 4th anniversary for that purpose.
That totally makes sense. That's your background, given how so much of your work that I'm aware of is not only about cultivating leadership. It's so much about bringing in voices from those who did not get to write history, since history was written by the victor in general, the material victor. That really makes sense. That's interesting to learn. So was it your idea? Did you start the family tradition to read the Declaration of Independence?
I wish I had, but no. So right now I'm in Montana, and it's been a tradition in this family here in Montana for at least 2 decades, maybe longer. There's a Maine tradition as well. So reading it that some of my friends are involved with. But because we hosted the 4th of July with the cousins and the friends on the gulch, and just family, I call it. Friends and family is family. All ages. We had toddlers to people in their early 80s. And so it seemed especially important this year to do it. And we literally, passed it around the circle, and those who wanted to read it did. They'd read segment by segment. And I thought that we might have to skip a bunch of the grievances, because there are many, many grievances, but we ended up addressing pretty much every one, minus 1 or 2. So it moved around the room, and our youngest reader was probably 13 years old. And as I said, our more senior readers were in their late 70s. So it was a really cool thing to do intergenerationally as well.
And so this has been going on for a while.
Yes. And I have to say, I was part of this last year and then this year, and it's chilling to read the Declaration of Independence right now. What I would do is just point your listeners and viewers back to the document. You have to read it with your own eyes to feel how it resonates, and particularly in terms of the grievances, what's happening that feels like a violation to those foundational principles of, the ideas behind this country.
Can you say more? Let's start naming specifics of like why it resonates with now.
Well, at the time it was King George. And it's, he has done this, he has done that, he has not done this, he has not done that. And I'd hazard to say that at least a third of those, if not more, of those grievances are accurate right now. So, history repeats itself, or history rhymes. It very much feels like that, going back to the primary sources 250 years ago.
Wow. I'm sorry I didn't pull out a copy to start reading right now. There was a point where, if I understood correctly when we briefly talked the other day, the reading of the Declaration of Independence tradition in your family shifted into, or added, starting to do the charades with charades of the constitutional amendments.
Yes. So This was a more recent activity, just 2 years ago. And it was, again, kind of a way to interact with the primary sources, but with more levity, because, the reading of the Declaration of Independence, it's somber. It was somber then, life and death, and arguably it feels that way now again. So the charades was, we have family members, the family loves to do charades. So it's a popular game anyway. And so we took some time, in advance. You have to go through the amendments, and we kind of pulled out the ones that we felt had more modern relevance, because some of them can feel, the legalese makes them almost impossible to understand. And it actually wasn't just the Bill of Rights. We did all of the amendments. So we pulled out the ones that seemed most relevant, and then kind of found shorthand titles for them. And, you can Google this and come up with sort of a simplified version of it too. But we were doing it sort of the old way, going through and pulling it out. And then we literally on pieces of paper wrote out kind of an abbreviated version, and we singed the edges of the paper so it looked like parchment. And so that whole process was fascinating. And again, it was intergenerational. These were kind of with our grown children and ourselves. So there are like 4 or 5 people involved in getting it ready. And so literally you're working the primary content, with your hands, processing it. And then we did the charades, which was just sheer hilarity. It was around an outdoor bonfire, at night. And we had 2 teams, and we split up the lawyers. There happened to be a couple lawyers in the group. So we made sure that we had, a lawyer on each side. And then we went through, lit the charades. You can't say the words, but you can do the moves. I read about this in the article. The lawyer on the opposing team is an old friend of mine. We go back to college, and she was so competitive in demonstrating her particular amendment that she ended up pulling a muscle in her back. I will say her team won because of her efforts. So there was the pre-work, which was fun. And then there was the actual charades, which was a blast. And then there was the talking about it, kind of after each one, we had questions, and the lawyers in the circle, were able to help us understand, well, what does that phrase mean? Like, what are the implications of that? What might be the history of it? So it was sort of, I'd say, 3 layers of interacting with the primary source. And so that's become a new tradition. And I would say, the most important element is that it's fun. It's fun to do, and that there's laughter involved, even though we're dealing with very serious things.
Wow, it just crossed my mind. What a great way to help us learn these in school and not forget them if in our classrooms we are doing these 3 layers. Starting with the prep of reading through the Declaration of Independence, digesting that, discussing it, and then you could stretch this out for a week-long curriculum.
You really could. I hadn't put on my teacher hat. I haven't had it on in several decades, but you're right. It could be a tremendous curriculum. And there's nothing like competition to kind of increase engagement. So, that element, that sort of healthy competition, would definitely play out positively, I think, in the classroom.
And I think the way we public schools in America teach civics is sorely lacking, and a lot of it, if not stopped. I think there used to be more time dedicated to teaching and understanding of our government, how it works, and the founding documents. And it's very helpful, not only when it's taught, also in context of a more perfect union that we've been working on, trying to add other human beings all along the way, which is some of which have been stripped back recently, which is probably why it is resonating for a lot of people. And even like the freedom of the press is so much pressure on, not including some actually really important pieces of news on different channels. So I mean, I can imagine some of the conversation y'all had, and how like it's so important to, and I think it's so easy to take for granted being an American and what it means to be in a democracy that requires activism. It's not on autopilot. It will not run on itself. Obviously, that's why we've lost kicking back on a few rights, like a woman's choice about her own her own body's health and needs, even with her doctors being threatened to be arrested if they mention some health options. That's so fundamental. But we've almost gotten used to that being stripped away. What was that, in 2023? In most states, not all the states, but.
Well, and I think also, I mean, not only are we not as civically engaged as we used to be and need to be, but what we're digesting through media has been regurgitated many times. And in my article, I talk about that telephone game where, one side of the table, you whisper something to the next person, but by the time it comes back to you, it's a different message. And I think that's happening. I don't think it is, but well, it's happening a lot in the channels that we consume news. And, there's sort of the silo effect, but also it's just like very, very far removed from the primary source. So, coming back to those original documents is harder and harder to do, or we're not in the habit of doing that.
We're definitely not in the habit. And some of the decisions that have come out of the Supreme Court in the last, 2 or 3 years are really quite mind-blowingly disappointing. Like, how could you interpret the Constitution that way? I mean, it really, some of the decisions seem so biased, even though some of them call themselves originalists. Sometimes it does not appear to be logically following. And again, it's hard, when things are written 250 years ago or more. And times are different. We have to use a lot of other like intellectual and hopefully emotional intelligence to think about the context of where we are now and who's here now. But some of that interpretation is disappointing. I'll say it that way.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that those are perfect documents. I'm just saying they're the original ones. So understanding them within their context and, what are the repercussions or implications now, having that conversation. Yeah, because they were, I think, the best they could do at the time, but, hence all the amendments.
Right.
Yeah. It's an evolution. The democracy is an evolution.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Hence all the amendments. It's an evolution. Well, and so I guess I want to hear about your activism, both with the conversations searching for common ground, and you also have like a strategic approach to it. Can you tell us like how it started and how it's going?
Yeah. So January of last year, 2025, in response to the election and the inauguration, there was a lot of fear in my community in Maine. So we pulled together people to kind of just be able to be together and to talk about it. And we call it Civic Conversations at the time. And my thinking is that common ground conversations are something I facilitate and equip people to have in organizations all the time, over and over again. It's a skill set. And you and I have talked about the importance of equipping people with the skills of doing this work, not just the theory of it. And so I partnered with a friend who also had a strong skill set actually in improv, in theater. And this idea of like, when you're in improv, you basically are just in the moment responding to what the other person gives you, and then you give back something else. So like the skills of improv, we brought to it, as well as, conflict resolution, mutual understanding, the skills that I bring to it. And so we met once a month. And I would say, early on, people were afraid to be on an email list. They were afraid to even communicate. Over time, that became more normalized. And then, there was a larger group who were sort of on the email list following it, and then kind of a smaller group who met on a monthly basis. And we were basically practicing having common ground conversations with our family members, our neighbors, people who didn't see things the way we saw things. And so, we literally had practice sessions, or we would say, here's a person and here's the conversation, how, like case studies, like how do I handle that? And so we did that for, 2025. And I would say it's helpful, but we weren't able to bring anyone else into the circle who viewed the world differently. So we were taking it out of the circle and talking about it, but not really actually bringing people into conversation. And so the beginning of this year, a colleague of mine, Ray Jennings, has done most of his career working overseas with countries, with communities that are war-torn, and having to kind of rebuild themselves, rebuild the resiliency. And so I've been partnering with Ray around a community listening project. And essentially what we've been doing is identifying who are the trusted sources of information in our community. And that comes through asking a whole bunch of people and getting lists and seeing what are the names that show up more than once. And then starting to map those names that have come up into different groups. So, it might be, age, or gender orientation, or, whether people are in the farming industry or in the trades, or, so anyway, we started mapping the various categories, and then identifying, well, what are the missing categories, and then going out to find, names, trusted names. So basically we have a resiliency map is what Ray calls it. And then over time, we developed a set of questions, about a dozen questions, for one-on-one interviews with these folks. And it's anonymous, like we're not giving any attribution or making any quotes. But we've been having these one-on-one conversations, and the questions are like, why do you live in this community? Like, what keeps you here? And when have you seen people in this community come together? And what do you think keeps people up at night? What keeps you up at night? Very sort of non-political questions about community and specific to the community. So we live in an area with, a number of towns, and we've actually focused into one town so that we're really speaking to the issues that affect that town, because it gets that granular. And so where are we going with this? We're not totally sure, but basically we're aggregating the information to surface the most common themes and also the most significant differences. And we will be sharing that back with the community. Again, anonymously, there are no names attached to it. But what I would say about this process is that it's about civic engagement by doing civic engagement. Like the process is the product, if that makes sense. And we started, we developed these questions, we tested them, we started having conversations with people we know, and now we're reaching further to people that we don't know as well, and who most may have very different viewpoints about the world. And, initially folks were kind of nervous about this, and the outreach itself takes time. You can't just, it's very relational. It is not transactional. It takes time. It might take a couple weeks to set up the conversation. You might have to do it through someone else to get the introduction. And so, at first people were nervous about it, but, we'd come back together and start sharing back. And the feeling of connection and the feeling of, going out and listening. The interviewer listens. That's all you do. You ask the questions and you listen in a, very present way. And the power of people feeling listened to is, also emergent. And people starting, like the people we interviewed, starting to talk to each other. And, in one case, it was people from two very different kind of parts of the community who were like, yeah, I had this interesting conversation about the town and what I think about it. Like, it was kind of cool. And the other person had their experience. So there's a bit of a buzz about this. So it's in process. And I think it's, enabling people to develop their listening skills and enabling people to feel heard in an unjudged way. And the connective tissue of that is like, you can see it happening. You can feel and see it happening. It's slower than watching grass grow.
Yeah, I bet. Because you're building relationships.
You're building relationships across, you're bridging, you're building relationships where they didn't exist before. So we're very much in the midst of it. It's been a slow process and very tangible at the same time. It's like in this time, there's sort of a sense of urgency, but you have to do the opposite here. It just has to be very patient and grounding, and consequently, it is grounding. And I see why this works. I start to see the web of connectivity become, more intricate and stronger in real time. Yeah.
Wow. Two or three things that stand out to me. When you said trusted sources, you mean people.
Well, sometimes it was like news sources too, but then in our town, those are people. I mean, everywhere ultimately comes down to people. So yes, ultimately people, but sometimes institutions as well as, the newspaper or other sources of information surfaced initially.
Okay. And that is just really interesting. So starting with a circle of people asking, what are the sources that they trust, and then looking for the names that keep coming up, or the institutions that are repeated.
Yes, and now our last question to every interviewee is, who else should we be listening to? So our list of names is growing exponentially. We won't be able to keep up with it. But the point is, we're reaching new trusted sources outside of our own spheres.
That is so powerful, because as you said, the power of listening, it's just so healing, and connecting with other human beings is what we need, since we're an interdependent species. Human beings need people, and so many people live in isolation. You're like breaking down the walls of silos, bridging. Another thing that stands out to me is when you talked about the granularity. The granular, because that's interesting too, because often I've been involved with like coordinating programs or projects like county-wide, but every town has a different subculture, just like every school. And like in this one city I live, every school has a different culture. There could be five elementary schools, but they're all different. And that's seems really smart to say, let's talk about this town now, or first, or let's be focused. And I mean, it sounds beautiful. I mean, who wouldn't want to be called and Like what? You want to interview me? What are you talking about? Why? Who mentioned my name?
Well, we say
Off.
number of people have identified you as a trusted source, so that's why we're coming to you. So people are like, as they should be, flattered, the importance of the town. And, we may eventually do a focus group in other towns. Like, it can grow, but, to your point, like every system, no matter how small it is, has its own culture. And for the output to resonate, it has to be true to the primary source, right? To the individuals in that town. I will say, some themes are starting to emerge. And one that's been pretty consistent is this, we're calling it a neighborly libertarianism. So there are a lot of Mainers who stay in Maine or move to Maine or like Maine because of their independence and their ability to live life as they want to live their life. And if something bad happens to a neighbor, a family tragedy or house burning down, they are right there with the casseroles and whatever else is needed. And I would venture to say that that's true in Montana, that's true in especially rural areas across the country. I think that might be a broader description of the American spirit, which is this neighborly libertarianism. So that's been interesting to see the emergence of that theme across the different demographics.
Sorry, you have to put a cough drop in my mouth so I don't have a coughing fit. Excuse me. So across different demographics, that's interesting. So regardless of your socioeconomic class or your heritage, I really saw that when I lived in Maine, which I was lucky to be able to live there for almost 30 years. That, like you said, not just will the casseroles start coming in, but people would rebuild your house if it burned down.
Yes.
You didn't have to even ask.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, it was so heartwarming and beautiful human kindness. And then, people didn't waste time needing to chitter chatter. They're just like, we'll get the wood, or he'll get the nails, or she'll bring the hammers. Mm-hmm. So impressive. And that's probably the most rural place that I ever lived. So it's interesting that, you also being real familiar with Montana and apparently other rural area can speak to seeing it, in more than one rural area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think it's unique to Maine. Yeah.
Well, another question I have, again, whoever's listening, sorry, I have to have a cough drop in my mouth. How do you, it's so cool. You guys are like, wow, let's map it out and put different categories, see which categories of people are missing so that we can include them, and calling it a resiliency map, because these are people who are connecting with each other and help each other buoy up. They can rely on each other. And then the questions sound very thoughtful. And then you said, if I understood it correctly, you're not sure what you're going to do with the information or how, but you said you will distribute. Do you know how you'll distribute it yet? Like how you'll share it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll share it to the trusted news sources in the area. And I will say, from a timeline, our goal is to, conduct 50 interviews and amalgamate the data and share that back prior to the midterms, because we feel, that it's important for this work to be happening now and people to hear about it now. So that is our timeline. So sharing it back, with the newspapers, having a community forum, where we share it. We've done a little bit this along the way because we're kind of recruiting interviewers into the process along with the interviewees. And then, it could be like going forward, if certain topics come up that are important to the town, we've built this network in a way. We're building relationships among ourselves and these people and each other. And so we'll be that much more able to reach out and say, this is an important topic, please come and weigh in. So, that's a possibility on the road that we'll be able to better mobilize around important issues to the town and bring more voices to the table because we've, identified that. So I think mobilization, in my mind, I'm an organizer. And, the trusted sources are not always your most obvious leaders. They are the leaders, but they're often behind the scenes leaders, the quiet ones who look around them, make up their mind, and decide to do something, and others follow. They have followers, but they're not necessarily entitled positions. They are who they are because they are who they are, and that makes them organic leaders. So, I wonder if at some point, if there was a need to organize and mobilize within our community in response to whatever's happening, that we have those, we know who those people are, and we have relationships with them already.
That's so beautiful because you're not coming to town from outside, for one thing. And another thing is not that there's wrong with organizing a meeting around an issue that really matters to some people. But this is different because it's based on from within. It's based on issues that have risen after connecting with and meeting the local population and saying, who else wants to add your voice? How much does it matter to you or you or you or this sector or that sector? Brilliant.
Well, I'm just part of the process, we were doing what we could last year, but it wasn't quite, what we wanted. And so, bringing in Ray and his experience, and then, other people are adding their experience. So it's definitely, all of us creating this, doing this together. Yeah.
Is it voluntary?
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah.
I know the people who are doing the interviews that you said you're recruiting interviewers. Are they some of the same people who already have been in the conversation?
Some, although we're starting to pull in a few more. And another question to our interviewee is, would you like to be an interviewer? Because wouldn't it be great to have the interviewing group more diverse? And, diversity in our area, one of the big sort of tension points is, are you from here or from away? And that has a lot of nuances because there are recent waves of immigration. There are people who, I came to Maine over 25 years ago. COVID brought a lot of people. There's been another wave since COVID. And so, being from here and from away, has, again, all of these layers. And so being able to, lost my train of thought why I brought this up, but having those different perspectives at the table is really important too.
Yeah, and the what I always thought was ironic with the from away thing was actually, if you're not a member of one of the tribes, we're all from away.
Absolutely. And we even, language has been important because, Mainers who have been there several generations call themselves native Mainers. And that was problematic. And so we ended up calling that category multi-generational Mainers. But within the group, there are conversations about people who've been there, 20 years, who are annoyed by the newer waves of immigration.
So ironic.
It is the irony. And, we see it and laugh about it, and it's there. Yeah. So I'm remembering what I was thinking, which is like, how great to have a group of interviewers who are like multi-generational Mainers to, recent arrivals, like to have that kind of spread on both sides, the interviewers and the interviewees.
Do you have anybody from the Penobscot Nation or Passamaquoddy Nation or any of that indigenous nations?
Not on the interviewer, but on the interviewee list, and we would love to engage them if they want to, more actively. So yes, it's something we're definitely paying attention to.
Yeah, I believe you are. Wow. So now, do you see this as like a replicatable or scalable, or like, could I bring it to my city, or if someone listening in the whole other state say, or should we like take some notes or contact you?
Well, the short answer is yes. I do think this is scalable in a micro way. We haven't quite completed the full cycle. So, it'd be premature to say like, follow this blueprint, just follow step 1, 2, 3, 4, and you'll be fine. We're not in that position. We're very much still in the thick of it. And I will say that the process itself has been worthwhile. Like, even if nothing comes out of this, the work we've done together and the interviews we've had have been worth it. It is intrinsically worthwhile. So I wouldn't stop anyone, saying like, well, wait until after the midterms, like, and if people are interested, I would, welcome their reaching out, and, I will gladly share what we have in terms of, our learning journey.
Actually, do you want to say your contact information out loud so people who are listening could
sure
get a pen and paper and write it down or put it into their phones?
Yeah. So it's Parrott, Kim Parrott, KPARROTT @ and this is my business name, SeaChange, SEA change -resources.com. So Parrott at SeaChange-resources.com.
I wonder if Rebel would be able to make a banner for the last 8 minutes.
I do want to circle back to something, Bahia, that I think is just so important, I would say, to me, to my activism, is that historically it was from a sense of duty, of responsibility, of guilt, of fear. And that well was running dry. And, this is work that, it's not a marathon, it's many marathons, if you will. Like it's work that never stops. And so, I've done some reading, learning particularly from Black female activists around this idea of pleasure activism, of enjoying, of doing it from a source of joy. And I would say that the Civic Conversations and the Community Listening Project has been joyful, not easy, but joyful. And I wouldn't be doing it otherwise. I just don't have the energy, the stamina, on top of other commitments. And I would also say, the other areas that my activism is in the country western band was about making, country music for all of us. And we sing resistance songs and songs that other people would sing with us. And there's just joy. We're women of a certain age, who just kind of on a whim started a band, and we just keep getting gigs. So we keep going. And I'll say the name of the band. It's called Damn Girls, the name of the band. And the Hella Band. We have an excellent band of musicians who back us up. And so that is just a source of like singing. I tell you, singing is one of the most powerful and enjoyable ways to express resistance. And then also, the stand-up comedy, I'm getting into a political satire, which is whether you're creating it or just as important, digesting it, following it. Political satire is one of the most powerful and joyful ways to undermine authoritarianism. So I wouldn't be here talking with you if I hadn't been able to find fun ways, charade games with constitutional amendments to make this hard work enjoyable. So I just really want to reinforce that, otherwise it's just this long, never-ending list of things we should be doing. And, I can only speak personally, but, finding the things that give me energy, don't just take my energy.
Thank you for underscoring that. That is so important because, as you said, it's lifelong work, and we'll just fall on our faces if we're not renewing ourselves. And laughter is such medicine, and singing, like, actually your brain gets excited and happy. You're breathing in a lot more oxygen.
It calms our nervous systems. It does all the things. Yeah.
Where do you do your stand-up comedy? In different, what kind
it's
of
very
venues?
local. It's with very friendly audiences. I'm in a group, and I'm in a troupe, the Comedy Collective, and so we usually have one or two shows locally.
Like in a town hall, or
exactly. It's precisely.
Yeah, and when I think of Maine, I love those town halls. They're such great community centers for local music. And gosh, okay, so no actual, do you ever do any cartoons, like written comedy, written satire?
No, I haven't gotten into that space yet. Yeah.
It's okay, you're doing plenty.
Yeah. But there's just, one of the best ways to get news, I find, is through political satire. You have to understand that they're taking it to the extreme, but the stand-up is about, the essence of it is like the bone marrow truth. And it makes it more palatable, honestly, for me to take in the news through political satire.
Yeah, and you're laughing your head off. Somehow you're able to process it and then come out and think about it differently without being weighed down by it.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, this isn't my thought, but when we're laughing together, we know we're okay. So one of our Comedy Collective mentor, really reinforces the importance of laughtivism as a way for us to be. And if you're not okay, you don't laugh. So fundamentally, like, if we're laughing, we're okay.
So well put. Well, we just have a couple minutes. Do you have any other, also first, will you say your email address again slowly, and then
Sure.
your closing thought?
Yes. So KPARROTT, Parrott at SeaChange, SEA change-resources.com.
Thank you. And what do you have for, what note would you like us to close on?
This also came from a conversation with someone else, but gratitude, grit, and grace is my cereal. I'm quoting a new friend. And I think that's really true for this work, coming at it from a place of gratitude. We're here on this earth. We get to do this. It's tough work. And the grace of not doing it perfectly. There's so many missteps to this work. And having the people around us who can point that out and help us figure out how to do it right. So I just end with that. That's been a recent inspiration that really resonates. So I'm grateful to you, Bahia, for creating this space for these kinds of conversations.
Well, thank you so much. I was going to say that that sounds like a country western song, the 3 Gs.
It might be.
I can't wait to hear that sometime. Well, I'm also grateful to you and the work you do, and to your whole team that I've been lucky enough to meet. And I also want to thank our wonderful engineer Rebel and our producer Dean Piper, and all the listeners and all the viewers, and spread the word. Contact Kim Parrott, and thank you again. And tune in next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on w4cy.com or Talk4TV. And may we all have enriching conversations and diversity and finding common ground. Thank you.
Thank you.